Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press, Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard.
Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, Alternative Parties friends, we have another exciting guest like we always have on this podcast. Her name is Sarah, and she's running for office. And God willing, she can tell us more about it. So welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thanks. Do you need me to tell you about the office I'm running for, or is that part of the question?
You can go ahead and tell our audience right away.
Okay. I'm running for South Carolina State Treasurer. I'm running basically as an independent on it's a small party in South Carolina. We've recently gone national, but it's called the Alliance Party. And I am running to replace a 12-year incumbent who I don't think is doing a very good job. So I'm a CPA with almost 18 years experience in public accounting, and one of my favorite things to do is kind of nerdy, is to look at data and do projections and forecasting based on historical references within financial statements. So I do it for my clients as far as their like tax planning and practice management. So kind of my jive and what I like to do. So I felt that the treasurer's position would be an appropriate position for me to take on in order to help manage the affairs of the state. So, yeah.
Yes, it sounds like it. Sometimes when people run for office, maybe often when people run for office, it's not something that they're the direct career path, but in this case, it's a direct career path because you have experience in accounting, it sounds like.
Yep, absolutely. That's right.
Interesting. So what led you to get involved in the Alliance Party?
I had decided that, because every time I'd go to the ballot, it would be incumbents running unopposed. And in the state of South Carolina, 70% of incumbent politicians run unopposed. So I was tired of not having a choice at the ballot box. So I decided that I was going to run for office. And the first time I ran, I tried to run as a write-in candidate. But the interesting thing is that nobody knows how to write in a candidate anymore. Because, it's with the age of digital selection, there's no paper ballot that you physically write on. So you'd have to know to add a candidate, type their name in, spelling and everything at least remotely close, and then select them as a candidate. So I had a lot of questions the first time around about, like, how do I add you to the ballot? Are you going to be on the ballot? I'm like, no, I'm a write-in candidate. They're like, how do you do that? So it was a little bit of a struggle trying to get people to vote for me when they didn't see me on the ballot, or B, didn't understand how to put in a write-in candidate. So I didn't want to run. So the next time I decided to run, I was going to run with a party because I'd be clearly on the ballot. It was a little bit more straightforward than a petition candidate because you have to get X amount of signatures in the voting districts for the office that you're running for. So it's like, I'm definitely going to run for a party next time, but I didn't like the idea of running for the typical, the branded, I would say, parties, because I thought that they were too polarized and too tribal. And I really wanted to run for a party that would let me run my own race and let me make decisions based on my preferences for, just engagement. And when I was going through the list of approved parties in the state of South Carolina, at the time it was called the American Party, South Carolina, and it had been put together by a former Democrat and a former Republican who had both either run for statewide office or been actually elected to statewide office, and they wanted to start a new kind of like different way kind of party, and that was a lot more free-form and let people be people instead of letting people be politicians or having people be politicians. so they also put, certain restrictions like ethical mandates and transparency mandates out there. So I'm like, this is the party that I want to be involved with. So I called Jim Rex, and my husband and I met him, and everything he said made sense. So from that moment on, I've been involved with the state party and gone to national conventions with the party to kind of further our design of what a political party should be, with transparency and ethics, and actually putting in term limits for the candidates that run under our party banner too. So in order to promote public service and less private monopolies of political offices.
So ethical mandates, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ethical mandates, what does that entail? What ethical mandates are they looking for?
So you have to basically put yourself out there as a candidate who is not going to be taking money under the table, or even just to make sure that all of you're not trying to keep anything from the public view. You're not trying to take money that is kind of like dirty money, as far as like from PACs, like from political action committees and all that kind of stuff. We want, and technically you can't take money from PACs anyway, but we want to run a straightforward campaign with individual donations, not any big corporate funding kind of situations, and put ourselves out there as candidates who are like straightforward and don't try to mush around topics. Like, I want you to know what I believe in. I want you to know why I'm running for office. It's not going to be like a wishy-washy kind of answer. I want you to know where I stand on something. If you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it directly, and I'm going to do so without causing controversy. And I think that's the biggest part of being ethical, is just not trying to rock the boat in a way that would cause more chaos for everyone than not.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
Most people have a familiarity with what a treasurer does for a state, but specifically, how would you define the roles and responsibilities in the treasurer in South Carolina?
Well, I'm kind of curious, because a lot of people I talk to don't even know what the state treasurer does.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
Yeah, and it's different in every state. In South Carolina, basically the state treasurer is the state banker. They hold. It's basically like if you were to go. They used to actually, when the State Department would, or when the state would issue paychecks, and you wanted to cash your check, you'd go to the treasurer's office, and they'd cash your check for you.
Huh.
But now it's much more digital, and the state treasurer is really responsible for holding the funds of the state until the legislature is ready to use them. So the money comes in from the Department of Revenue, and it sits in the state coffers. And then when the Department of Revenue is ready to issue, to basically spend the money, there's another office that's elected that actually writes the check. So the treasurer really is just the one that holds the money and is responsible for overseeing investments to make sure that, with inflation especially, that the money grows, and that, we're either receiving interest or dividends or whatever the state is invested in, that there is a return on those investments. Right now, a lot of that facility is given to third parties, like third-party brokers that the state contracts with, and the treasurer is just responsible for maintaining those contracts. But again, there's not a lot of transparency as to what the state is invested in or who is in charge of those contracts. You'd have to ask for public information releases to get those details. But that's basically what the state treasurer does, is hold money. The other facility that the South Carolina State Treasurer does is they are in charge of the Coverdell education savings accounts for education, and it's kind of a situation where the treasurer is no longer responsible for what those monies are invested in, but basically maintaining the contracts that do manage those accounts. So
I see.
For the state.
Sure. So in your position as a CPA, what did you learn about the government that you want to change, shall you get elected to this office, or perhaps to lobby to change as you are running for office?
Well, as I mentioned, the treasurer is responsible for those Coverdell education savings accounts, which are basically like educational IRAs for children, and he uses he's basically giving an advertising budget to promote those Coverdell savings account in the state of South Carolina. But at the same time, he's using his personal image and name as the state treasurer to do those promotions. So it's almost like he's getting political recognition by using a state-run institution to get it, which I think is unethical. And I'd like to make sure that when I'm elected, that I bring legislation to the state legislature that says this, you cannot do this. Like, you cannot have your name or your face associated with advertising that is directly linked to basically to programs associated with the state directly. Okay. So that covered it. The education savings accounts is one of those funds specifically that between billboards and commercials and radio ads, he actually uses his voice, his face to promote those products, and I think it's unethical because he's no other executive office in the state has that privilege, and I want to make sure that the treasurer's office is stopped from doing that as well.
That's a good idea. So he's the guy that's running against you, you said. I remember you saying earlier that in South Carolina they usually run unopposed. So does that mean that there's not a Democratic or Republican? There's only one person you're running against?
The incumbent is a Republican, and he is running. If I was not running, he would be running unopposed.
Okay. So the Democratic Party is not fielding anybody.
Correct.
Is he well liked in the state, or is he unpopular?
It's, as a Republican, the South Carolina is a redder state than not. So my challenge is that people vote party. They vote tribe. Right. And I don't think that they're aware of some of the ethical issues that he's had in the past, or that some people find his management style toxic. So it's one of those things that it's hard for me to relate those details to people who really don't care, because, like I said, a lot of what he's doing is kind of managed by third parties or by outside affiliates. and it's just now more of the treasurer's responsibility to maintain the contracts and make sure that the state's getting a good deal. So, and without more transparency in the office, it's hard for me to pinpoint that I would change this specific practice or this specific contract. And I mean, there is some security to it too, because you don't want, with open information, I mean, someone could look at the holdings of the state treasurer's office and decide that they wanted to tank it, and basically, because I don't know how much you know about stocks, but even with like the GameStop and AMC, where individual investors can roll stock one way or another, it's one of those things that you don't want that to happen to state institutions. But at the same time, it's from the outside looking in, it's hard to say that you would change this or that because you just don't know the granular details.
Sure.
But I do know that with my experience and being able to mine data and being able to use historical references to understand, have a more complete picture of what's going on within a financial statement, I think that I could do a good job of making sure that the state is not being, swindled basically, and to pinpoint specifically what the current treasurer is doing wrong is not as easy as it seems. But with that ethics issue, with the state programs being used to further his public image, I do see that as a specific issue ethically that I'd like to address, and I think that it's wrong. So that's kind of what I'm hinging my whole campaign on, is the unethical nature of his use of public programming to basically get political gain. So.
Sure. So what is your campaign strategy? How are you going to reach the voters and spread your message to them?
Well, in the past, I've done, of course, yard signs and parades. I'm trying to do more things like this, like podcasts, and get more broadcast radio, and even I need to, it's one of the things on my list, is I need to start bugging small local papers for editorial space to kind of push the idea that the state should not be supporting this kind of unethical behavior with respect to public programming for political gain.
So are you running this campaign by yourself, or do you have a team helping you out?
I do have some people who are making calls for me, and obviously the Alliance Party at large is very generous with their time and answering questions and brainstorming ideas. So for the most part, I'm running the campaign by myself, but I do have a lot of input and assistance as far as just putting in the mileage to get appointments put together and schedules set up for interviews, or even kind of like the editorial, because you can do editorial interviews for newspapers and stuff too. So putting together a list of different outlets to contact, finding the right contact information, making the contacts. So I do kind of have a couple people that are helping me do that legwork.
That's good. It's good to have help.
Yes.
So you've already secured the ballot, or do you have to gather signatures?
No, it's already on the ballot. I'll already be on the ballot as soon as the party confirms their slate of candidates.
Okay.
I'll be on the ballot.
Okay, so the party's got ballot status.
Yes. Yes, they do.
Good. That's one less thing you have to worry about then.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the election's on is it November 7th?
Yes, the regular general election on, let me see, I was going to look. I think it's November 7th. No, it's November 8th.
Okay, so it's coming up in about 4 months.
Yes.
Does your campaign activities change as it approaches, or do you have a steady pace that you've gone throughout?
No. So it actually ramps up closer because during the summer people are on vacation. They don't want to deal with politics. They're not paying attention, especially to lower level races. So unless you're involved in politics, they just don't care. And I would say that that's 90% of people, unfortunately. And I found that in my last campaign is that people, again, they don't really pay attention until the month before. For me, there's just some things that I also need, because I've done several different campaigns, my website has layers to it, like this campaign, this campaign, this campaign, this campaign, and I have to go back through and kind of clean up everything so that everything's now referencing the treasurer's race again and not the state senate race that I did last cycle. So it's one of those things and I have a full-time job and I have 4 children, so it's a lot going on and trying to manage a campaign. Because again, if I didn't run against him, there was no one else to put on the ballot. So I want to make sure people have choices and that the choices make sense. So I think that for the state treasurer's office, CPA makes sense. So
yes, it does. So you said you ran for state senate and other offices. What did you learn from those other races that you're applying now?
Pretty much the issue that nobody, and this is the daunting thing, is that nobody really pays attention until the last month before the race. Starting October 1st is really when people start paying attention to who's on their ballot, and you can kind of see that just in the emails that I get and the conversations that are coming through on my website and my Facebook feed. It's just people don't really pay attention to the last month. Also, I've also found that when people look you up on your website, they don't look at other websites. 90% of people just look at the first page of your website. So anything that you want to convey to people really should be on the front page, because they're only going to. Again, I'm a down ballot from the governor. Again, I'm on it's part of the executive branch of the state legislature, but at the same time, it's still an elected position, but it's not one that is really on anyone's radar as far as having any kind of influence. So whatever information you have to convey it first. Put it there where they can see it immediately when they go to your website. So that's another piece of information that I think is kind of helpful for anyone who's thinking about running for office.
Yes, that sounds like a good tip.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sarah, how can our audience support your campaign?
The best thing is to email me and let me know how you'd like to support me. And my email is sarahwork4, FORSC, @gmail.com. So it's sarahwork4, South Carolina, @gmail.com. And my website is work4sc.org. And it's really just, reach out and let me know how you'd like to help, either whether, make those phone calls, help me, put out flyers on doors, or if you have contacts within broadcast or publishing companies to help me get my name out there to the larger audience, it would be a boon. I'd really appreciate it.
Awesome. Sarah, we wish you all the best in your upcoming campaign, and we thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
All right, all the best to you in all your personal and professional endeavors and the campaign.
Thank you so much. You have a good one.
Take care.
You too. Toodles.